Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, beta, in today's class, we are going to go ahead and we are going to talk about poverty, right? And you will see that poverty and inequality are very closely related. बहुत ज्यादा close relationship है poverty और inequality का, है ना? जिस कंट्री में पॉवर्टी ज्यादा देखी जाती है वहां पर इनइक्वालिटी भी ज्यादा देखी जाती है. वेरेवर यू सी हायर पॉवर्टी, you also will go ahead and experience higher inequality in that country. ठीक है. Now to begin with, we want to go ahead and we want to understand what comes with poverty. क्या क्या होगा अगर poverty होगा तो there will be illiteracy, people will not have money to educate themselves. There will be undernutrition, लोगों के पास खाना खाने का पैसा नहीं होगा. There will be ill health, people will not have good health. And there will be many other things that will come with poverty, right? So therefore it is very important to go ahead and understand poverty. बहुत ही important है कि poverty को पढ़ा जाए. Now we have seen that poverty is also one of the fundamental goals of economic development. अगर हम SDGs की बात करें, Sustainable Development Goals, or if I talk about Millennium Development Goals, it has been seen that poverty has always been an important measure. Poverty एक important measure count किया जाता है उसमें, right? Also, you need to go ahead and understand that just like we have principles of inequality, inequality में हम अलग अलग principles पढ़ते हैं, poverty is also associated with certain principles. ठीक है, तो I will just write some definition बेटा, तो मेरे साथ लिखो please that poverty is one of the characteristics of underdeveloped economies, right? Poverty brings with it illiteracy, undernutrition, ill health, and utter bleakness of the future. माने ये नहीं पता होता कि फ्यूचर में क्या होगा क्योंकि पैसा नहीं है. You don't know what the future will be, right? And and if we go ahead and if we look at some of the data, तो data से पता चलता है that a lot of people have been under poverty in the world. ठीक है, so if I look at um, about in the year 1990, right, you will notice that the number of poor people in the world, they were more than 1 billion, right? So number of poor people in world more than 1 billion. More than 1 billion people in the world were poor people. ठीक है, तो देखा गया that with time consumption has increased. जितना लोग consume कर रहे हैं वो बढ़ा तो है, but still many people have been seen to be below poverty line. Okay, now we can go ahead and we can talk about something which is called as poverty line, जिसकी मैंने just अभी बात ही की, that that what is a poverty line. So let's define poverty line. है ना? अच्छा, अब सुनो मेरी बात. A poverty line can be defined in terms of income also. It can be defined in terms of consumption also. Income माने क्या कर सकते हैं? हम ये बोल सकते हैं that if people earn their income below a certain level of income, then they are poor. तो जैसे अगर मैंने यहाँ पे बोल दिया ₹300 per day, and I say anyone who's earning below this is poor. So I have defined my poverty line in terms of income. एक चीज ये हो सकती है. The other thing that you can go ahead and do is you can define your poverty line in terms of consumption. That anyone who is consuming below these many calories, है ना, जो 2500 कैलोरीज से कम कंज्यूम कर रहा है एक दिन का, that person is poor. So poverty line can be defined in terms of income. It can be defined in terms of consumption expenditure. It can be defined in terms of calories also. ये सब कुछ अलग अलग तरीके हैं in which different countries have gone ahead and defined a poverty line. So please write down with me. A critical threshold of income, consumption, or more generally, access to goods and services, below which individuals are declared to be poor. तो हमने एक थ्रेशोल्ड बनाया. That threshold can be in terms of income, can be in terms of calories, can be in terms of anything. But we are defining a threshold. हमने एक level बताया that if you are below this, right, then you are poor. हमने उसके हिसाब से एक poverty line बना दी, right? So it is the acceptable level of economic participation in a given society at a given point of time. ठीक है. अब हर कंट्री में the poverty line is very different, right? Some countries go ahead and give poverty line based on the nutritional level. Some countries go ahead and give poverty line on the basis of basic things. जैसे मुझे क्या चाहिए? Cloth, food and shelter, है ना? तो cloth, food और shelter का total cost कितना? उसके बेसिस पे I can go ahead and say that this is the minimum money required और इससे नीचे जो भी होगा will be the poor person. That is how I am defining poverty line. So please write down that we can collect the money required on minimum nutritional level. आपने क्या किया ना, you create a food basket. ठीक है, आपने बोला कि we need milk, we need curd, we need egg. आपने एक food basket create किया. So based on the food basket or based on the nutritional level, ठीक है, so you are collecting, you are asking, you are finding out how much money will be required, कितना पैसा चाहिए होगा to gain that minimum nutritional level or to buy a given food basket, right? Right. And to that we add cost of shelter and clothing to get the poverty. समझे? That can be the poverty line. Sometimes some countries fix on the basis of mean income. मीन इनकम माने क्या? जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल, if I tell you that income of person 1 is 10, income of person 2 is 20, income of person 3 is 30, income of person 4 is 40, income of person 5 is 50. And I go ahead and I find the average income. So average क्या हो जाएगा? Y1 plus Y2 plus Y3 plus Y4 plus Y5 divided by 5. So you will get the answer as 30. अब आपने क्या बोला ना? That poverty line is 60% of mean income. तो 60% of 30 हो गया 18 रुपीज. तो अब हमने इसको फिक्स कर दिया दैट एनीवन who is not able to afford 60% of the average income. ये 60 is random. हाँ, मतलब ये नंबर भी different countries can keep differently. कुछ country can keep 70% of the mean income also, and कुछ countries can keep 50% of the mean income also, right? So it's not that you are fixing it at a particular level. This number can be anything, right? But once you have fixed this, so we are going ahead and saying कि ठीक है 60% of mean income ही मेरा poverty line हो गया. So anyone who goes ahead and who earns less than this, that person will be thought of as a poor person. उसी को हमने बोल दिया that that person is poor. ठीक है. So then your threshold will become 18. देखो ये average income तो 30 है, यहाँ पे कहीं पे 18 है. Anyone who's earning less than 18 will be considered poor. माने only one person will be considered poor in this economy. सिर्फ person one, he will be poor. ठीक है. So this is another way in which countries can go ahead and can set their poverty line. Then we have seen that countries such as US, right? For a lot of their part, they have always set the poverty line by 3 times the minimum budget for food requirement. ठीक है. तो उन्होंने बोला कि ठीक है, खाने के लिए सपोज हमें $100 चाहिए, तो हमने इसको 3 से मल्टीप्लाई करा, तो $300 हमारा पॉवर्टी लाइन हो गया. क्यों? बिकॉज वी नीड टू कंसिडर अदर एस्पेक्ट्स ऑल्सो. वी नीड टू कंसिडर दैट वी विल बी स्पेंडिंग मनी ऑन रेंट ऑल्सो. घर पे भी खर्च करोगे, क्लोथिंग ऑल्सो, राइट? सो द स्केलिंग ensures that we have taken in a way that person will be spending money on other expenditure. जैसे हम poverty line को 300 कर देते हैं, it ensures that we are considering that money will be spent on other expenditure also. So in US, they have just scaled the food expenditure by 3, and this ensures that we have considered proximity for other expenditures like clothes, shelter, etc. ठीक है, like clothes, shelter, etc. ये समझ में आई बात? Okay. Now let us go ahead and talk about India. ठीक है. So in India, again बेटा इंडिया का बहुत ही you should know the history of India also, right? So you should know that इंडिया में कौन कौन सा पॉवर्टी लाइन के लिए कमिटीज बना है, what was the रंगाराजन कमिटी एक्सेट्रा. एज एन इकोनॉमिक स्टूडेंट अच्छी बात है अगर आप ये सब जानो, राइट? एंड आई एम जस्ट गिविंग यू अ हाईलाइट ऑफ इट. सो इन इंडिया द पॉवर्टी लाइन्स have been drawn by using estimates of expenditure necessary to guarantee a minimum consumption of calories. Right? So this is what has happened in India. Okay. Okay. Now the question is कि whenever we decide on a poverty line, जब भी हम poverty line के बारे में सोचें, what are the explanations? What are our concerns? Right? कि poverty line को सोचते हुए क्या क्या सोचना जरूरी है? So basis of poverty line. So the first thing that we need to go ahead and we need to consider is item by item consumption versus overall expenditure. Item by item consumption versus overall expenditure. तो ये क्या बोलता है? This says that should we go ahead and should we calculate poverty line based on how much people spend on each and every item? Huh? Or should we go ahead and should we calculate poverty line based on the overall expenditure done by people? हाँ? क्या हम एक इंसान को तब पुअर डिक्लेयर करें जब वो जो एक्चुअल में कंज्यूम करता है चीजें वो कम हो जाता है, या तब उसको पुअर डिक्लेयर करें जब उसका खर्चा कम होता है? बोथ थिंग्स आर वेरी वेरी डिफरेंट, राइट? सो कंसिडर, सपोज आई टेल यू आइटम बाय आइटम कंजम्पशन में that if you consume less than 1 liter milk, एक एग्जाम्पल ले लो, if you consume less than 1 liter of milk, then I am considering you poor. ठीक है? Now there is a very rich person, but this rich person is currently on a diet and he consumes only 200 ml of milk. बहुत कम दूध ले रहा है. So will I consider him poor? क्या उसे हम poor declare कर दें? No. So item by item consumption में एक ये इशू रहेगा, what about the people who are starving themselves? वो खुद से जानबूझकर they are not eating food. Then how do I go ahead and how do I think about such people? है ना? So we need to first of all decide that on what basis, किस basis पे हम इस poverty line को define कर रहे हैं. What is the basis of defining the poverty line? Is this making sense? So please write down. Okay, write it. Item by item consumption is the actual observed consumption of a basket of goods that are the threshold of consumption. है ना? तो आइटम बाय आइटम में हमने पूरा बास्केट बताया कि देखो, अगर इतना मिल्क नहीं लिया, इतने एग्स नहीं लिए, इतना प्रोटीन नहीं लिया, तो द पर्सन इज पुअर, राइट? दैट इज आइटम बाय आइटम कंजम्पशन. इट इज हार्डर to measure. Overall expenditure measures the total expenditure on items required to meet a threshold of consumption standards. Overall expenditure में हमने खर्चा बताया कि how much money is required, पर item by item consumption में हमने actual में consumption देखा, that whether the person is consuming that thing or not, right? So in overall consumption, when a person falls below it, he is considered poor, right? अब देखो एक्सपेंडिचर की वजह से क्या होता है ना, एक्सपेंडिचर इंश्योर्स दैट वी कंसिडर द कैपेसिटी टू कंज्यूम एंड नॉट द कंजम्पशन इटसेल्फ, राइट? जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल एक और एग्जांपल लेते हैं, तो देयर इज फ्यू एग्जांपल्स. एग्जांपल, इन आइटम बाय आइटम कंजम्पशन, a wealthy individual who is on diet may end up under poverty. तो अगर एक बहुत अमीर इंडिविजुअल है बट ही इज नॉट ईटिंग फूड, ही इज ऑन अ डाइट, तो इसका मतलब ये थोड़ी दैट ही इज पुअर. आइटम बाय आइटम कंजम्पशन में ये बहुत बड़ा इशू है. सिमिलरली व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द ओवरऑल एक्सपेंडिचर, जब हम ओवरऑल एक्सपेंडिचर की बात करते हैं, इट इंश्योर्स दैट वी मेजर द कैपेसिटी टू कंज्यूम एंड नॉट कंजम्पशन. माने इमेजिन आई एम रिच, but I want to spend my money on having cold drinks, on having processed food, and I am not getting the right nutrition. मैं ठीक खाना नहीं खा रही हूँ. I'm not eating the right nutrition. Does it mean I am poor? Right? No. Right? So we need to understand that just because I am not consuming milk, egg, and I am consuming burger, pizza, does not mean I am poor. ठीक है? तो item by item consumption में तो उसको poor मान लिया जाएगा because the person is not consuming those goods. Right? So second, this was example 1. Second लिखो, the overall expenditure measures capacity to consume. तो capacity तो है ना, because I am able to spend money on burger, pizza, etc. मतलब मैं खर्चा तो कर रही हूँ. I am able to spend money. So capacity to consume and not consumption itself. Right? For example, nutrient level. Might not rise with rise in income as people consume processed food. Right? As people consume processed food. Is this making sense? ठीक है. Another thing is that overall expenditure is comparatively easier to measure also. तो यहीं पे कहीं पे लिख लो that it is easier to measure. Right? So that is the basis